So after Prince Shotoku's death, keep in mind that his mother was a member of the Soga clan. So the Soga clan really enjoyed a great deal of power and closeness to the imperial family during Shotoku's life. But after his death, the Soga clan really lost a lot of their influence with the imperial family. Other families became more and more influential at court. And actually, in the year 645, there was a coup. There was a little revolt in the imperial palace. And the Soga clan were completely defeated and annihilated by a new family, another family, known as the Fujiwara family. You'll be hearing this name for a long time, very important. So the Fujiwara family were very anti-Soga. They were actually very, very pro-Shintoism. So they weren't anti-Buddhist, but they were not as pro-Buddhist as the Soga clan were. So they didn't like the fact that the Soga clan had gotten so close to the imperial family, and so the Soga were defeated by the Fujiwara. So now the Fujiwara sort of take over as the imperial family's right-hand family, right-hand Uji clan, who will help them administer government at court. Remember, in another country, the Fujiwara might have said, well, we defeated the Soga, let's get rid of the emperor too, but it's Japan, the emperor is divine, so we can't touch them. So instead, the Fujiwara get rid of the Soga, and then they just take over as being the emperor's most loyal minister, most loyal subject at the court, at the palace. So the Fujiwara essentially helped the emperor rule the country, and even though they defeated the Soga, they were not opposed to new influence from China. So they actually continued the Soga clan's job of getting new Buddhist influence and new ideas, new political ideas, new social ideas from China. And if anything, they were actually more reform-minded than the Soga clan. The Soga clan kind of got a little stagnant at the end after Prince Shotoku's death, but the Fujiwara said, look, we want to revitalize the country. The Soga are not doing enough to help. Let's get rid of them, and we are going to really help the imperial family build a new Japanese state. Okay? And so they really get new ideas from China. And two major reforms took place during the Asuka period that were basically crafted by the Fujiwara family. Okay? And I'll talk about those two reforms in a moment. Buddhism's position remains very strong. Okay, the Fujiwara ascension to power doesn't change anything because the imperial family is still very pro-Buddhist, and the Fujiwara eventually become more warm towards Buddhism as well. In the year 673, the new emperor, Tenmu, actually makes a statement. He says Buddhism is the great protector of Japan, and they will officially fund and support the construction of any Buddhist artwork or temples. So the imperial family basically becomes the protector of Buddhism because they believe that Buddhism will protect Japan. So this is a very big statement in the middle of the Asuka period. And that's why during the last few decades of the Asuka period, you see lots of new beautiful bronze sculptures of Buddhist deities popping up all over. Many Buddhist temples are built all over Japan, and this is because the imperial family is basically sponsoring the spread of Buddhism throughout the country. Okay? And this is an example of a Buddhist sculpture from the Asuka period. You can see that it is very, very Chinese in its influence because basically now the sculptures are all being influenced by artists who have gone to China and studied and now coming back and spreading that artwork in Japan. So the two reforms by the Fujiwara family take place in the middle of the Asuka period. They were created by the Fujiwara, and the emperors would basically decree it, make a decree and say, this is what we have decided to do. So the imperial family kind of takes a backseat and lets the Fujiwara take care of stuff for them. So the first reform is the Taika reform of 645, and this was a land reform completely based on the Chinese system. So according to this land reform, any land that existed in Japan, agricultural land, to plant rice or other crops, all land belonged to the emperor and the imperial family. Okay? He owns everything. He owns the land you live on. The emperor would, through a census system, distribute equal portions of land out to farmers. So if you're a farmer, the government will give you the land that you have. And you are free to do whatever you want on this land until you die. When you die, you are not allowed to give this land to your children or to your descendants. Instead, the land goes back to the government, and it is then distributed to another farmer, sometimes from your family, sometimes not from your family. So it's a very, very intricate system where basically the imperial family has all the land and they distribute it out to the population. But this basically didn't work. A couple of reasons why. Farmers were very poor and basically they lived their entire lives on land that doesn't belong to them. You're doing all this work and you can't even pass on your land to your children or to your grandchildren. So then your kids have to get land at another place, at another location, or they might not get anything at all. Or they might get a smaller piece of land than their father had. So basically farmers are treated like property. They have nothing and they own nothing at all. Not even the land that they've spent decades working on. Also, this was never an equal system because people took advantage of it. Powerful aristocratic families who were close to the imperial family got more land. Shinto shrines and Buddhist temples basically got to keep their land, and they got more land than the farmers. And these people did not have to return the land to the government. So if you were a powerful Shinto shrine or a Buddhist temple, you basically got to keep that land forever. If you were a member of a powerful family, like the Fujiwara, for example, you got to keep your land forever. You didn't have to give it back. So it was a very hypocritical system that did not really work well. There was a second reform that did work a little better. This was called the Taiho Reform of 702. And this was not a land reform, it was actually a political reform, again, based completely on China. And what this meant to do was it aimed to create a very centralized bureaucratic system like in China. China has a very, very intricate bureaucracy with the emperor on the top, with provincial officials on the bottom. Each province is ruled by a very, very bureaucratic office that handles all the things like land distribution, taxation, etc. And so the whole aim of the Taiho reform was for the Fujiwara family to create a bureaucratic system so that the imperial family, the emperor, is at the top of the hierarchy. Under him are the various Uji clans, like the Fujiwara or the other clans, and then each below them you have other offices that are, in charge of doing different things, taxation or collecting land, distributing this, keeping the wealth, etc. So this reform basically creates a whole bunch of political offices and positions, minister positions, magistrate positions, judiciary positions that create a very, very bureaucratic and advanced central government with the emperor in the center and at the top, of course. So this actually was a good system in that it organizes Japanese government and the Japanese government, and it creates a system very similar to what was happening in China.